I am a spiritual master. But what does that mean? It probably doesn't mean what you think it means. That term has been so misunderstood through the ages. I don't need anyone's validation to reinforce or to validate the fact that I am a spiritual master. I'm not a master of you. I have spiritually mastered myself. That process started 50 years ago. It is an ongoing process. And at some point in your life, you can proclaim that indeed you are a spiritual master if you've been able to master your own personal spiritual self. If you have issues with controlling other people, then you're not a spiritual master. If you think it's your prerogative as well as responsibility or privilege to control other people, then you're not a spiritual master. If you make rules and you are the leader of an ashram and you say, well, you're not following these edicts that I have proclaimed, then you're not a spiritual master. But I am a spiritual master. From my own self-judgment, I've come to that conclusion. And it has been validated by the Creator through personal visions and revelations. That doesn't mean anything to another person in this world except me. I'm only telling you this so that you understand what the term means, so that you quit being misled by people who proclaim themselves to be spiritual masters and then use that as a tool of sorts to control you personally. That leads me into the next idea or concept of free will. If you were, no, let's rephrase this. Until you understand the true nature and accept it as a reality that free will is the universal nature of yourself as well as all souls. Until you accept that, but first you have to understand it before you accept that. It isn't possible for you to make the next evolutionary step in your spiritual quest or on your path. You would be the equivalent of a person sitting in a library that has gone there to study the building of an automobile, for instance. And you've been in there for 30 years. And at that point, you've told the librarian, any new books that are created in the world on automotive creation, building, design, whatever the case may be, forward that to me as soon as possible, because I have gathered the information from all sources in the world. I've even taught myself foreign languages so that I could understand books and periodicals and science journals that are not converted to the language of which you might be, so that you could absorb everything there is. But you've never gone out and built a car. And could you build a car? Yeah, you probably could after 30 years of studying it, but I guarantee you, when you start, you're going to become frustrated and you're going to go, man, I didn't expect that, or this or that, or whatever the case may be. So until you understand the absolute true nature of free will, you're still sitting in a library. I want you to know that my own interaction with spiritual people that think they know what free will is, and as said, oh yeah, I understand what it is, and I accept that as a concept. Of all the people I've ever talked to in my life, you could hold them in one hand. You could count them on the fingers of my one hand in the world. And yet, hundreds that I know and have talked to, hundreds, if not thousands in my life, say absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, I understand what free will is. And yeah, that's definitely reflective of the way reality truly is with mankind. And yet, in reality, you could count the number on one hand that actually know what the nature of free will is. Everybody throws that term around as if they know, but they don't. If you knew the nature of free will, it would instantly abolish the false teaching of non-duality. It would just toss it out the window. It would absolutely destroy the foundation of Christianity, as well as all teachings of spirituality that I've ever discovered on my path in this life. So you have to go beyond the library. You have to understand what the hell that means, free will. A computer does not have free will. A computer will never have free will. It doesn't have an independent nature about it. It may very well be random, like the computers that randomly pick lottery numbers, or the so-called AI that they are creating, and they're going, well, we can create an AI computer that exercises the nature of independence like a human being. No, it doesn't. And why? Because they don't even understand what the meaning of free will is. That's why these scientists can say such things. Because they're just like the person sitting in the library that has never understood what it's like to build a car. People that build cars write the books that the people in the library study. Does that make sense? Until you're enlightened to the nature of free will, you don't know what it is. You may know the basics, but you really don't know. And those that have displayed the most intellectual understandings of what free will really is, those are the ones that are most ignorant of free will. Because they have brainwashed their own self into what they think it is. I've said this on some of my other videos. That is the one thing. Well, I shouldn't say one thing, because there's a concept of love, which is another type of thing. But that is one thing that God did not create. cannot create. No God can create free will. It is uncreatable. It defies the understanding of all spiritual teachers I've ever known of or heard of. I think I said in one other video, I don't know how many years ago, but I had this discussion with a person over an extended period of time, meaning when I say over an extended period of time, without a break, meaning driving in a vehicle over the course of several hundred miles. And so had this spiritual discussion where you can't escape. And I found it so fascinating that this person, after hours and hours of discussing the very nature of free will, finally goes, oh, now I get it. Now I understand. And then they would explain it back to me in such a way that told me, oh, okay, so you do understand the nature of free will. Yes, I do. Only to be squashed in the next 5-10 minutes. And that person would go, no, it can't be true because of blah, 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 blah. And why? Because they're clinging to the dogma of Christianity. Or they might be clinging to the dogma of non-duality. Or the dogma of Sanatana Dharma. Or the dogma of any spiritual teaching. Or the dogma of atheism. And then once they return to that foundation or dogma that they have based their being upon or their understandings upon, well, they accept that and denounce the nature of free will. And then the interesting thing is you ask them again like 3 or 4 hours later, so do you understand the nature of free will? Yeah, I understand it because of this and this and this and this. They've lost it. They don't understand. It's like a magical thing that it's drawn out of their head or their mind or their understanding. And they just have this rudimentary, basic understanding of it. You would be wise to understand or to study free will. Spiritually speaking, what does that mean? And then meditate upon it. Because if you understand that, that is another tool, just like I talk about like enlightenment, if you understood that my hands can't pass each other when you do division, and yet they do pass each other, is proof positive of Buddha enlightenment. Free will is another tidbit or it's another concept that if you understood it, it would just blow your mind, your physical mind. It would blow your ignorance. It would blow your ego out of the water. It would no longer exist. It can't exist. So understand when I say, of all the people I've known in my life that we've talked about it, and it numbers in the thousands. You could count on one hand the people in this world that I know that understand the nature of free will and think, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I'm being generous when I say you could count the number of people on 5, less than 5 people. So yeah, you should spend time studying that. It is incredibly spiritually profound. Another concept I wanted to cover is love. And what I mean specifically about love is the love of one another. In this world, there are many people that maybe from a spiritual foundation will say, yeah, I love all people and blah, blah, blah. And they just say that because, well, it's incumbent upon them to say that. Otherwise, they would have to denounce their religion or their faith. And so they say it. And they've convinced themselves that they actually do love everyone. But in fact, they don't. Or else they loved everyone in such a way that they refuse to acknowledge the evil, if you will, in other people that might hate them. So when I'm talking about loving all people or loving one another, excuse me, what I'm talking about is like, here's a good example. Parents say they love their children. Well, not all parents say that, but most parents say that. But what's there to love when the child is 5 or 6 months old? What is there to love? Because at that point, the baby, child, infant, there's not much there to love unless there's something wrong with you. I mean, seriously, think about this. What is there to love in this little child that all it does is cries when it wants something? It's annoying as all get out. You can't sleep through the night. It shits all over you. It pees all over you. It's always hungry. It is the most selfish entity that you can possibly define in life. And yet parents say, oh, I love this baby so much. Well, you know that that's not true when it comes to people that are not the parents of those children in some certain stances. And why do you know it's not true? Well, because there are many situations where, I won't say married, but a lot of times you'll see situations where it's usually men, but it can be women at times, where there's a woman that has a child and maybe out of wedlock. Excuse me for my throat. I won't say I'm recovering. I just kind of, well, not kind of. I had COVID for about 4 or 5 days, and it was not a fun thing, I will tell you. It was actually the worst situation I've been through in my entire life with the symptoms that COVID has. So yeah, that wasn't very fun. So I'm still coughing a little bit from it. Anyways, be that as it may, I take all kinds of vitamins and all kinds of things to stave off that terrible thing. And I have been for a couple years now. But that's a side note. But anyways, getting back to the situations where there's a woman with a baby. And she hooks up, and of course, not of course, but let's say it's out of wedlock, and there's no father there, and maybe the father never cared in the first place. And it's not the greatest family situation. And then because the woman is sexy to a particular man, he's attracted to her. And so the woman has to go to work or whatever, and the man might be a lazy shit and wants to stay at home while she goes out and works, or whatever the case may be, he's left alone with this little baby. Well, as soon as the mother walks out the door and is gone, and he knows that child, the mom's not coming back for 5, 6, 7 hours, he can't seem to control that child. And he can't control it because he doesn't love it. And so when I say control, getting back to a spiritual master, I control myself. That's why I'm a spiritual master. So he can't control this infant because he doesn't love the infant. Well, he doesn't know the infant. That's why he doesn't love it. And maybe it's within his nature to be a beast. I mean, it happens in the animal world as well as in humans. And there's incident after incident. I mean, you've read it in the news, you've seen it on the news. He kills the baby, beats the shit out of it. Just, the paramedics show up and the child's all beat to shit, broken arms, choked to death. Remember, I'm a retired firefighter from a large fire department. So I'm not speaking out my fanny, if you know what I mean. I've witnessed to this firsthand experience. So I'm telling you it's real. So, yeah, there's these men that murder these little babies. But why? Well, because there's nothing there to love. The baby wants what the baby wants. And the big tough guy with his muscles and everything, it doesn't matter what he does, he can't seem to control that baby. And the baby is not getting what the baby wants. I mean, he can give it the bottle and give it some food, and it's like, after a while, it's like, what the hell do you want? And he's... And the baby just cries more and more and more and more, and he can't seem to figure out, what the hell does this baby want? Here, I'll give you some more milk. I have 4 children, by the way, so again, I'm speaking from experience that I loved my children because I was the father of those children, and I loved them from the very beginning or before they were born. I loved them. So I have both sides of the experience. And so there's nothing there to love. You can say there is, but you'd be lying or ignorant because there isn't anything there to love. Now, maybe that baby loves you, but at this point, there's no way to know that. So as the parent loves the child, and there's nothing there to love, essentially, as the parent loves the child, you have to love one another. You don't have to. I'm just saying, if you want to become one with God. Eventually, maybe not in this lifetime. Maybe you've got some issues in this particular life and you find it difficult to love everyone, and that's fine. That's fine. There's plenty more lifetimes. But if you want to become God enlightened and you want to become one with God eventually, you absolutely have to love one another. There are no individuals in the kingdom of God, so to say, that do not love all that are in the kingdom of God, as well as all. So you have to love one another. Now, saying that you have to love one another, is that true? No. Because of free will, you do not have to love one another. Forgive me for coughing. You do have to love one another because why? Because everyone loves one another. That doesn't mean you have to. You have free will. You can choose not to be one with God. But if you understood the nature of free will, you would understand that you were not created by God. I'm not talking to the you that is the physical brain or the mind or the spiritual mind or any of that stuff. I'm not talking to that. Because that is God. That would be like me, God, speaking to God. That's, of course, what the non-duality people teach. But I'm not talking to that. I'm talking to you. The you that you don't even know. You don't know who you are. You don't even know what you are. Which is the point and purpose of this reality. So that is an important concept to understand. Free will. It is an understanding that if you understand it, and you understand the foundational reality of what it really is, and you get your ass out of the library and actually do something with that knowledge and wisdom, it will make one heck of a difference to you personally in gaining an exponential spiritual leap or jump in your understanding. But you're never going to get there if you're not a spiritual master. You have to be a spiritual master. Because unless you're a spiritual master, that means you are mastered by something else, by some other dogma or some other spiritual form or satanic forces or demonic forces or whatever the case may be. You are then being controlled or manipulated or whatever the case may be. Then you are not the master. They, it, whatever is the master, not you. You have to be a spiritual master. And you'll know when you're a spiritual master. Nobody has to tell you. You will know. And God will know. And when you and God both know, well, and then combine that with love, that's when things start to happen. Now, let's say you do understand free will, and you are mastered in all that you do and say and all these things. Does that mean you are impervious to outside world influences? No, of course not. And what do I mean by that? In a certain way, if you have someone take a hammer and smash your finger, are you going to go, well, that's a very interesting smashed finger? Isn't that weird how the bones are squished out of the finger and blood is spewing all over it? Wow, that is so interesting. I'm not my body. I'm not my finger. I'm a spiritual essence with free will. Nobody's going to do that. I assure you nobody's going to do that. They're going to go, ow, you son of a bitch. They're going to haul off and punch you in the mouth, or if they had a gun, they'd pull it out and shoot you. And then, of course, the spiritual master would go, oh, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. But the bottom line is your finger is going to hurt. So don't get these idiotic notions in your mind or teachings from these satanic sources that try to teach you that, oh, if you're a spiritually enlightened master, that you will sit down in the lotus position all day long and go, Om, I am the greatest of all there is. I know everything. I float on water and air. It's That's all bullshit. It isn't real. Yeah, you might be able to use a siddha, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, miracle. You might be able to walk on water. You might be able to float through air. But even with all of that, when somebody smashes your finger, I assure you it's going to hurt. And you're not going to look at that finger in an instant and go, well, that's very interesting. Any more than Jesus did that. Oh, well, that's a very interesting thorny crown. Can you help me and readjust that a little more? What I'm trying to teach is for you and everyone else to be practically minded, to question all the dogma that you've been taught. Because when you get yourself out of the library and into the real spiritual realm, that's when you start learning stuff. Because that stuff isn't in the library. You will be in a situation where you're creating your own material that can be put into a particular library. As I said, there's not 5 people that I know in the world that understand the true nature of free will, or have understand it enough so that they go, oh, that's what it means. Yeah, that I get that, and I understand that. Because if you understood it, if you understood the nature of free will, you would have no problem believing it. That would be the same thing as saying, do you understand the nature of having your finger smashed by a hammer? Do you understand the oh yeah, yep. Read that in the medical journals. Yep, I certainly understand it. Do you understand how painful it is? Yeah, yep. I have all kinds of PhDs on the wall. I understand the free nature of hammering fingers. Yep, got it down. Really understand it. Oh yeah? Mash! Oh, you fucking son of a bitch! Did you really understand the nature of smashing a finger? No! Do you understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? Anyways, I'm going to close. I love you. I really do. And I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Because the only reason I do this is because at some point in the future, at the end of this kalpa of time, you and I are going to be one with God. I hope. And that's going to be really awesome. Anyways, thank you for watching. I love you. Bye.